This is This Week in Perspective with me, Adam Simbe. On the 21st of September, Unicef launched its global report on early childhood development entitled Early Moments Matter for Every Child. The report underlines the importance and the case for political commitment and investment in early childhood development programs and services. The report also was launched at a special high-level event during the current United Nations General Assembly in New York. To discuss this report, its importance, and particularly the significance of investing on early childhood, with me today are, on my right, Hadija Hadija Halid. She's from Doctors with Africa, based in Iringa, but she covers that region very well. She'll tell us why Doctors with Africa. I mean, there's so many Doctors Without Frontier and all this. She'll tell us the difference at what she does.
Thank you.
Next is Maniza Zaman. She's UNICEF country representative in Tanzania, barely a year and a half here. Next is Dr. Jocelyn Kaganda. She's the boss of Tanzania Nutrition Center. And last but not least, Josephine Fala.
Yes.
Fela.
Yes.
Yeah, I know Fela of the best singer in Nigeria. She's from the Elizabeth Glacier
Pediatric
AIDS Foundation,
Yes.
based in Dar es Salaam.
Yes, based in Dar es Salaam.
Ladies, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Viewers, you can see how happy I am today. It has never happened recently for me to have an all-female panelist. I'm very glad. This question of gender imbalance because ladies are not represented is today defeated. Thank you very much for your coming.
Thank you.
I hope in the next 55 minutes we'll try to explain to the Tanzanian viewers what it means on the early childhood development programs and whatever. Now, I would like to ask Zaman, you UNICEF country representative, to start the ball rolling, and you can all chip in and answer. What is the significance of this global report to Africa and especially to Tanzania?
Thank you. First of all, I'm delighted to be here, and as you said, it's a wonderful panel actually with women, but also, of course, wonderful to be here with you.
The only gentleman.
Yes, indeed, yes. Let me maybe start off a little bit at the global level, why it was important for UNICEF to come out with this report at this point in time. A couple of things. I think in September 2015, government signed up to the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think that has been widely publicized. And these goals are actually goals that bring together, as we would say, people and the planet. These are goals that deal with human development, that deals with the environment and deals with peace and security. Now, in looking at these 17 goals, what governments also signed up to within those goals are areas which are about human development and child development. And this time...
1 minute.
Yes.
It's about human development and child development.
And child development. Human
Children
development beginning with child development. That's what nations have signed up to. So I think really at this time when the UN General Assembly got together, it's about 2 years now since that was signed, those SDGs were signed on to. It's already important to start seeing beyond the papers, beyond the advocacy, where are things going. So I think that's one element. Second element is this area of early childhood development, which we will be discussing. There's been a lot of recent brain science that is really important for policymakers, for the ordinary parents, for the program managers to really
Carers,
integrate,
child
carers, to really understand. And I think that's why it's so timely that this is coming out. You specifically asked about why is it important to Africa and why is it important to Tanzania. In Africa, what's striking is actually the demography and what's happening. And it is a young continent, and it is going to be an even younger continent. By 2050,
It doesn't grow?
it is growing, and by 2050, 40% of children, i.e. people under 18, 40% will be living in this continent. Right? So you are seeing really population growth, many more children in this continent, and I would say then also Tanzania, as we know, population growth is very high. And I think it's really important to start thinking about children and investing in children, and this is what the report is trying to do, stimulate that conversation and hopefully get some policies to shift and programs to happen and change to happen on the ground for children.
Is the demographic development or status vis-a-vis Tanzania population being a pyramid with the younger generation broad at the base, thinning up as you go, anything to do with that?
Yeah, absolutely, because right now, already half the Tanzanian population, about 24 million Tanzanians are under 18. And if current projections go as they are at the moment, we're going to be a nation Tanzania is going to be a nation of about 54 million under 18s. It will double by 2050. So just think about the scale of that. Right now your population is about 50 million. In 2050, that's going to be your population of children. And unless you start thinking about these children now and investing in them and knowing really how to optimally support them, it's going to be a very, very tricky journey.
Plus other
Yeah.
Consequences of not taking care of the children and the child not
Absolutely.
developing earlier, ending up with delinquencies and social
Absolutely.
evils and all that. All right.
Yeah,
Doctor,
I think
yes.
I support Maniza about whatever she has been saying.
Yes.
And I agree we should talk about early childhood development because this is the foundation of our lives.
Exactly.
It's like I can compare with building a house. When you put the foundation, that's where you put the foundation in human development. So if we don't look at that focus, we are going to lose. This foundation is the future population, is the future workforce, is the future families, is the future of everything. So I think it's very key that we focus in the early time of our human development.
Do you ignore, 1 minute, I know you're just do you ignore those that have passed the age you're talking about, like myself, because we also need special care, don't we? Old age and all this.
It's not about ignoring, but we want to reverse the situation. If we didn't pay much attention to you and your colleagues at your age, so we should not continue doing that.
Yes.
We should really focus in what we want the 50, the 30 years Tanzania population to
That's
be.
my grandchildren.
Yes.
All right, okay. Adija or Jocelyn?
I just wanted to go back in terms of the science.
Yes.
And I think that's something which is very significant, which we can't ignore. The evidence which is coming out now is about the brain development, that by the age of 3, 80% of child's brain has grown up. And that's such a powerful message that whatever you invest at that time has got a significant impact on that child's future. So if we want to reverse anything, we really need to start at that age, 0 to 3. And what we are talking about there is these interventions which we are doing all the time, whether we're talking about nutrition, we're talking about protection, but also the very key area which has almost probably been forgotten is the early stimulation. being responsive caregiver to the children and early learning. So we're actually talking about the preschools, but also we're talking about early stimulation at the beginning. Yeah.
Sorry, Dr. Kaganda.
Yes.
How do you link this with maybe the stories, but it could be the truth I heard about, was it 40%? 34% of Tanzania young children are stunted, or Tanzanians are stunted. That might include me, or it's just the children.
No, that is the statistics for under 5. So we are talking of 34 children out of 100 being stunted. And the most worrying, because I know many people, when you talk of stunting, and because of the way we are getting the stunting using the height and the age, said, but look at my height, but I'm not stunted. So the most worrying part is the brain stunted. So that is very critical. And we know the brain is being fueled mostly by nutritious diet. So why are we having all these children stunted? And what are we thinking of the future? And that's the big part. But we have other forms of malnutrition also compromising this group we are talking about today. So if you look at the children who are wasted, I'd see the numbers is small, like 600,000 out of the population of under 5. But these children are the one that will die very quickly if nothing is being done to these kids.
They will not reach their first birthday, I suppose.
They will not. Or they will not cross whatever age they were compromised by this wasting scenario. So I think it's very critical to talk about this age because the numbers are really worrying us. And if we are not doing anything about it, I don't know if we are going to reach the economy that we really want to reach.
All right. I know you wanted to come in, but I was going to give a chance to Adija also.
Yeah.
People want to hear as well.
Yeah, everyone has talked, so I also need to talk something. In addition to what Maniza has said on the importance of this report actually tells exactly, with a clear picture, with evidence, on which is the critical point,
Go on.
which is the critical moment we need to invest for child development. And the colleagues have said it is during that period of conception to where the child reached 3 years when she's or he's going to school. But the important thing also, what I have noted, is the disadvantaged children, those coming from poor household, with low and middle income population, are the ones who are missing that opportunity of being developed. And through the research that have been going so far, it was seen that when you invest to these children with from poor household, yes, receiving highly quality responsive stimulation at the young age, it seems that they can even earn up to 25% more as adults compared to those who are not receiving those interventions. So it is very important to invest more on early moments during that conception period to where the child goes to school. It is very important for the potential of the future children.
What is your experience where you operate in Njombe, Iringa, and I don't know, Songea, I don't know,
Yes.
Mbeya, I don't know. What is the experience on the ground as far as you are concerned?
Okay. As Doctors with Africa, we are implementing in those regions, Iringa, Njombe, Simiyu, Ruvuma, and Dodoma. We are implementing nutritional activities, nutritional projects, but those projects are dealing with the reduction of stunting. We are dealing with 1,000 days of we work on developing the cognitive part of the brain of the child.
Since birth?
Since conception.
Okay, since conception.
Yes. That is, we deal with the pregnant woman health, nutrition, and all that. But also we are involved in treating of acute malnutrition in both regions. But currently we are integrating the ECD component because we know that we have been talking about food security, we have been talking about protection of children from harm, the violence, the neglect, the traumas that children face. But actually, we noted that the important thing is the responsive stimulation by the caring adult. That is missing within the communities.
Do you find this prevalent in the areas you work with?
Yes, but actually now, because we are involving groups, we call PSG groups, the mothers are meeting in groups, they discuss about behavioral change, infant and young feeding practices, and how to feed their babies, how to breastfeed. But the most thing that was missing is the stimulation part of the child's
How
brain.
long have you been doing this with doctors in Africa?
Few months, almost
Just a few
6 months.
So it's too early to kind of assess?
No, I can say because I've been following the projects from where it started up to now. So the impact within the community is very huge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's give a chance to Maniza. She wanted to intervene. Yes, please, go
I
ahead.
wanted to pick up on this whole issue about the brain science. I think it's important to maybe simplify it a little bit because it sounds, out there.
Yeah.
As the other panelists have said, babies basically are born with millions and trillions of unconnected brain cells, okay?
Unconnected.
So there are lots of, yes, they're not the neurons, the connections between the cells, what they call the connections, have not yet been made. There is so much potential to now those connections to be made in the right way.
Is it
now,
Maniza, so
yes.
is it made or developed?
In what? So this is the thing. So that's the thing that the report says.
Yes.
Building better brains,
Yes.
meaning that don't assume that when your baby's born, it's all done, it's all there. Because we are parents, or we are sisters or siblings or grandparents. You can see every day how a baby is just taking in the cues, right? And every development stage, a week, a month, a few months, something is happening, And what is it that's needed to optimally help that baby's brain develop? And that's what we're talking about. So what you need is proper health and nutrition. So it's nutrition alone will not do it, even though 75% of the nutrients that a baby takes actually goes for brain development in the first 3 years, 75%. So it's health and nutrition. It is the early stimulation the panelists have been talking about. What does that mean? Let's break it down. It means reading to your child, playing with the child, interacting with the child, talking, singing. That's what it means. It's early stimulation sounds quite big.
General broader lab?
Sorry?
Lab? How about that?
Yes, in a whole sort of environment of love.
Yeah.
And third, let's not forget protection and safety. It's so important because when babies or children, young children, are subjected to violence or are in violent environments where they are exposed to violence, maybe not on them, they see things,
Even within the house?
Even within the household,
house,
even
yes,
within the household,
exactly.
that impacts negatively on the way that the brain connections can be made. So that's why I thought it was important to clarify what is it that we're talking about. It's actually those three elements, big elements, that we have to be talking about. Yeah.
My second question was, maybe you have responded to Maniza. While, at least the three of you, while early moments matter for every child in the context of overall children development.
Okay.
You have responded.
we
have responded.
Yeah, we've talked about, but we can elaborate more. So there are some issues Maniza was just going into why it matters, because first of all is the development of the brain. Everybody, every parent, every leader to speak wants somebody who will be able to manage, to do things, to make things happen. So if the child is compromised with health, with nutrition, with the environment, the violence and all this that we are seeing in the society, all this will, compromise the connectivity of the brain. And the more brain is having connection, the more active, the more innovative, and the more learnable it is. So if all these are being compromised when the child is very young, then we will expect this somebody to be stunted, the stunting we are talking about. So will not be innovative, will be slow in taking action. You know, it's like you calling a colleague here to connect something, and you know, it's taking forever. It's something very simple, but it takes slow motion because the brain has less branches, you know, to connect into the issues around the child. So I think this is it matters. But in another area is about the productivity and development of the country. So you can imagine linking to this. If you have, you know, 34 out of 100, what about your nation productivity in the future? So this is also connecting to that. The level of education, the outcome of all the investment in the education. If you have these children who have no connection, you use a lot of energy, but at the end of the day, you will not have the product that you wish to have. But in terms of investment, now the economists are not here, but we are acquired economists, you know. The best investment that you can do is to invest in the early child. And because the return, you know, it goes up to 14% return of your investment. You know, what business is that can give you all this, you know? So this is something that, you know, makes us, you know, really emphasize on the investment in early.
Dr. Kaganda.
Yes.
Sorry to ask you this. Where do you link first the inherited and congenital problems in early child development, and how can you explain these young and girls, some of them mothers already in the streets of Dar es Salaam begging? Did they not get the best moments in their early childhood, or what?
So the discussion we are having here, the environment that the child was connected, you know, when the pregnancy happen and when the child is born, the environment matters a lot. So this sometimes you see other people are saying it's genetic and all that. So all this subject, you know, you can have generation and generation. If you don't move this society from that environment, they will continue. If the child is being born in the street, imagine how rough the street is. The mother is in the street, the child stay in the street. So you can imagine what kind of generation it is. So the cycle will continue because you have not intervened, you know, remove these children from the environment we are talking about.
You compound the poverty cycle?
Yes, so I wanted to pick up, in fact, what my neighbor here was mentioning in terms of, in terms of the relationship between early childhood development and equity. Often early childhood development, or investing in this, is said to be an equalizer. What does that mean? It means that basically even when children are born into poverty of circumstance, if they get this kind of right interventions at the right time, they have a fair chance in life. They will have a fairer chance in life had they not got this kind of, let's say, package of key interventions. So it really can lift communities, children, and families out of poverty. So I think it's really important also to link it to poverty reduction and what that can do for the country. And if you allow me, Tanzania, we were talking about the statistics in terms of stunting in Tanzania, which is 34% of our children. But if you look at some of the other elements as well, because when you look at health, we still have 370 children dying in Tanzania per day. Okay? So in terms of health and making sure they even survive, we still have an agenda there. Nutrition we've talked about. When you look at early learning opportunities, because it's also about early stimulation and early learning, which is that preschool part, which is also important. Only 50% of the kids who should be getting that opportunity are getting it. So why is this relevant for Tanzania? Because the data tells us that Tanzania has made progress, is making progress, but you have a young population. You have to look after that age group. It's a 1.7 or 8 million babies born every year here in this country. It's a huge number.
Okay.
It's a huge number.
Josephine, before you come in and respond, I was actually going to ask you a question which is related to what Manisa said. Who has a responsibility for early childhood interventions she was referring to?
I think it's all levels. So I'm saying the all level because as, for example, as parents, we actually need to demand for the service. So the way we demand for example, for health, we demand for education when you want to take your child to school. We need to understand that early stimulation is very, very important. That if I don't invest now, meaning that my child will not be able to reach where I want to reach. Because we are preparing our children now to a unknown world later. We don't know what kind of world is going to be by the time they are at adult age. They need to be ready and to be competitive. So how are we preparing them? So as parents, as caregivers, we really need to know that and actually demand. So if you are asking a politician or you are asking a government, you don't just ask for ensuring that the health facilities are there, but also the early stimulation or ECD investment. And of course the government as well. So all these arguments about investment, the economic investment, we really need to look at the government as well. And when I talk about the government, unfortunately, ECD is a cross-cutting. So we're talking about...
For my viewers, you have to understand. ECD
so early childhood development. Childhood development. Yes, early childhood development. So we are looking at nutrition, we are looking at health, we are looking at education. Yeah, we're looking at protection. So we are talking about number of ministries there. We're talking about environment. So a number of ministries which are responsible. How are we going to make sure that there is a leadership in terms of coordination? We're talking about budget. Up to now, I'm not exactly sure how much budget is put for the pre-primary education, but apparently it's very, very little. We don't have the system or program for parents in terms of parenting education for children who are below 5 years old. So those are things you really need to look at.
I was going to ask you, Dr. Kaganda.
Yeah, I just want to add on the statistics of the pre-primary. You know, if you look at the statistics that we have, it's only the facilities for pre-primary, only 17% all over the country. And the qualified pre-primary teachers is only 80%. So you can imagine we are talking of very important item here, pre-primary education. So I think, as she's saying, investment in this area is key.
We'll come to that. Hadija, to follow up on what Manisa and Josephine and Dr. Kaganda said, would you prioritize those interventions?
Of course, because coming back to the importance of investing, we know that I would like to go back to where we said the brain of a child is built, and it is being shaped, and the depth in terms of cognitive development, social development, emotional development, that actually influences the capacity of that child to learn, to solve problems, and even to relate to others. So it is very important to invest and prioritize on early moment, because it is the period that will entails the future of that child.
That is from birth to 3 years, is it?
From conception, from where the pregnant occurs to
if the pregnancy is well taken care of, monitored.
Yes, good health, nutritious food, protection, because we know that mothers have been violated, abused like that.
So mothers who feed on ugali alone, what would you say?
Because we know that ugali doesn't offer all the nutrients, so we need to have a balanced meal. But another thing that I would like to add on that, we said we can engage all sectors, but the real thing or the real issue is male involvement.
Very important.
Because within the family,
Very important.
you know, upbringing of the children is mostly
Mother's
left to
responsibility,
mothers,
yes.
yes, but we need fathers to actually get engaged from conception
Yes.
up to where the child has to be brought out.
If the fathers are in the group of those stunted,
That will be a problem.
This is really a cultural issue across Africa. It's not only in Tanzania.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
the caring of children is being taken as a women business. And men, you know, they are relaxed, you know.
and
But
spend it on-
sometimes it's not
on
like
group.
that.
That's why in our projects that we are implementing in the regions,
Yes.
we are involving the counseling groups. Those counseling groups are involve mothers and also fathers.
Excellent.
But though we are facing the difficulties of them to be engaged in the process, you can find very few are participating in those groups.
Okay.
But
now,
we'll continue.
Now I move on to the next question because we realize time goes fast here. The other question is for you, Manisa. Why, as the your UNICEF report says, there is a case for political commitment and investing in early childhood development? Why?
Yeah.
Why political commitment and investment?
Yeah. I think, you know, the political commitment, we realize that once we have the top leadership voice that brings recognition to a particular issue, things move. Things move. So I think it's really important that really the political leadership first has the facts and is aware of the importance of this issue, both, I would say, for individuals, but importantly for nation building. And I think that's really, really important. And the report basically comes up with 6 key, let's say, asks for government. And if I may just quickly go through them, the first is really increasing basically the money that's put into early childhood development programs. It's still not top tier priority. It's still not. So that's one. It's money. It's also having those policies that will really support parenting. Let me give you an example. What do I mean? I mean basically paid time for mothers to go and breastfeed, working mothers. Paid family leave, including paternity leave, not just for mothers. Paternity, it's recommended that mothers get 6 months and fathers get 4 weeks. That's what the report is suggesting, that all governments look how they can do that, right? Then there is this issue about, you know, this leadership. Colleagues were scattered in different ministries. If you're looking at ministries, it's important to be able to really have a champion at the highest level to bring things together.
The major coordinators. it was.
Yes, but at a very, very senior level, so that it's really seen that this is really important. So I think really having that is going to be important. Also looking at, I think, when it comes to programs, it's also asking governments to look at how can they be creative and just look at their current programs and add the missing elements. So for example, if you have a strong nutrition program, how can you add the piece which is about parenting and early stimulation? If you have a strong health program, as you do, you know, how can you add the piece about early stimulation, the missing pieces? So as governments, as partners, let's look at those efficiencies.
Does that involve promoting, strengthening the maternal and child health?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's a huge vehicle. The health system is a wonderful vehicle, you know. That's what you're doing, exactly.
Yeah,
Please,
so
yes.
in Tabora, we work with health facilities in the program. So the RCH, is a reproductive health section, and the CTC section. So this is for HIV-infected families. And what we do, we build capacity of health workers for them to understand the early stimulation component. So at the facility, when a family comes, they're not just focusing on providing health and nutrition, but they look at the early stimulation component as well. A pregnant mother, when she walks in at the health facility, she's being counseled about being health, nutrition, but also how to look after themselves, how to start communicating with the baby since when the baby is in the stomach. Of course, it's something
you
which
can?
Yes, yes.
My mother did tell me she communicated with me when I was in her tummy.
Exactly. So because we're talking about the brain development here, that is start from conception. So from when the mother is pregnant, so starting to communicate, and the partner as well, the husband.
You teach them how to start communicating with them?
Yes, rubbing the stomach and talk to the baby, pray. When you're praying, you pray together, and just when the baby's kicking and say, "Mommy, I'm here, I'm listening to you." So all those kind of things.
And the dad's voice is very important.
Also in that.
Is that so?
Yes.
That should also say, "I hear you, my."
Yes, exactly.
But in general, they don't know which child is in there. So you can say, "I hear you, my son. I hear you, my girl." These days, of course, medical science has advanced so much. They can tell you what. Let me come quickly to you.
Came back to my last point, which was around the 6-point agenda. The last point is really around communication and mobilizing communities and basically this information that we're discussing here. The challenge is, how does every family, every community in Tanzania get this information in a way that that they can really absorb and practice? Because we have to start with the premise that all parents love their children and want the best for their children. I mean, we need to start.
You can say that again. I mean,
Yes.
all this
Yes.
killing of babies and all that wouldn't be the issue.
Well, yes. I mean, of course, there are some that are always there's exception to the rule.
There's an
But
exception to every rule,
but the
isn't it?
norm is that. So I feel that, if we're able to take the science down to that grassroots level and also help, sometimes families are in poverty. You might give them the information, but they don't know how to practice because they're so poor. So you need to also look at their conditions, not just give them information and expect it to happen,
Very briefly, which countries were covered in this global report?
So
Was Tanzania included?
this particular report, which looked at, for example, there are about 160, 170 countries which we looked at in relation to 3 key policy areas, okay? One being paid breastfeeding breaks, the other being paid parental leave, and the other being countries which have policies that allow for 2 years pre-primary education, okay? And Tanzania was included in that, of course, when you look at the league. And the one that Tanzania does have is around the paid breastfeeding breaks. That's what it has. It does not yet meet the global recommendation of 6 months paid maternity leave, nor 4 weeks paid paternity leave.
Were you you
Yes.
aware of the current ILO conventions
Yes.
on maternity leave
Yes.
and parental responsibility?
Yes,
Was
I
this
mean,
part of the whole.
Indeed. I mean, I think the UN agencies, of course, work together, and particularly on this area, UNICEF with ILO, really does work together on this. So I think I would say it's not only Tanzania. Most countries actually have only one policy in place. Very few countries have all 3. So let's move the bar.
Now,
I need to add something.
you want to add something,
Yes,
Adija,
because
very
it
quickly
is,
before I was going
okay.
to go to.
Thank you. I would
to
like to
Dr.
go back
Ganda.
on the issue for investment. I know investing in early childhood development is actually affordable because we have current nutritional activities or interventions.
Who should in the first place?
Who should?
It's affordable, but who should do it?
Everyone involved, the community, the higher level, the policymakers and all that. So it is affordable because we have currently implementing projects, nutritional projects within the country. You can just integrate those interventions of early childhood development in those, the existing ones, so that you can have that result. Like what we do, we are implementing the nutritional projects within the regions where Doctors with Africa is implementing, but we have inserted that early childhood development component in those interventions. So it is easier.
Okay. Dr. Kaganda,
Yes.
what does Tanzania need to do, if she's not doing it already, to promote ECD early childhood development, and ensure that every Tanzanian child grows up in an environment that guarantees his or her full potential? What does
Yeah.
Tanzania need to do if she's
Yeah.
not doing it already? If she's doing it, just say.
Yeah, so Tanzania, we have a good education policy, but our main challenge is on the implementation. So, and the other challenge is the awareness of the population. Saying this, I wish if this week perspective in Swahili will be conducted so that...
Are you enticing me to have a Swahili version of the program?
I think so because I mean
I know. This
the
has been a cry for
Tanzanians
many years.
need to hear this, what to do. You know, sometimes we go to radio and people appreciate. So
But
I
when
think
we talk in English, people
Yeah.
like
Maniza.
they'll bring in more money than if you talk to somebody who is struggling for 3 meals per day. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so
sorry,
as
Dr.
we've been discussing, I think Tanzania need to coordinate these efforts because we've seen, I mean, each one of us is talking of, ECD, the early childhood development is a multi-sectoral issue and it cut across various sectors. But we need a lead sector really to champion, to see that all the necessary interventions that we know are being implemented, are being integrated into program and plans and are really reaching the community. So I think we need to do this and increase the coverage. So you find like Doctors of Kuam is doing something in Iringa. But if you go to neighbor district, maybe there's nothing. So very important that we know what are the interventions. So we should really fight for scaling up, increase the coverage so that each society is being reached with these key interventions.
So the collaboration between the organizations,
sectors, but also leadership.
And the Ministry of Health, for example,
yes,
is basic, it's fundamental.
But Ministry of Education also
Ministry of
is key.
Education.
Yeah, because we didn't talk here issues of water, sanitation and hygiene.
Yes.
It's really key to the early childhood development. Very important.
Okay, I'm
so
sorry,
now
I
I'm
have to-
adding more sectors
I
here.
have to continue rushing you because I'm warned by my director we have 15 minutes left.
Okay.
Perhaps any one of you can answer this very briefly. What is the current status of children in Tanzania in the context of her population, vis-a-vis population of Tanzania? We've heard, of course, government ministers, particularly Dr. Philip Mpango, saying our population is too high, and the growth in particular is too high to sustain our economic growth. So I think you did cover that. So may I not ask you again, but you can say very quickly what it is, and then move on to the next one, which I think you can also. In your view, is childhood development a serious problem in Tanzania, and how serious is it? Very quickly.
Yeah, I think it's a serious problem. We've been giving you numbers. You know, when you have stunted kids, 34 out of 100, this is very serious. But when you look at the service that is being provided to pre-primary, and my colleague have talked of not having this learning and stimulation, even at a point of household. So it's not a common practice, and I think it's the society does not know that this is important. You know, when you talk, we feel like this is a westernized culture, you know, singing, talking to your kids. They don't understand.
To the pregnancy first.
To the pregnancy first.
I mean, I'll look
you know,
at my
most
wife
of us,
is
we just we just ignore. Said, this kid, you know, is not listening. He doesn't understand. But we don't understand. I think it's a serious problem. You know, aware of how important it is. But also the coverage of service, we know how it is, you know. We are still very far from reaching there. The pre-primary education.
I have 2 more questions, Dr. Kaganda, to complete.
Okay.
I hope it's now only left with 10 minutes.
All right.
Now, do children in Tanzania enjoy their basic rights? And would therefore investment in their development matter and also make a difference? Very quickly.
So I mean, do they enjoy their basic rights? Let's just say some children do. Many children don't. And as the data has been showing you,
Yes.
I think Tanzania has made huge progress in reducing under 5 mortality. It is making progress in reducing malnutrition, even though it's still high. It has made a lot of progress, for example, in the number of children who are born with HIV. So they're good areas. So in terms of, let's also appreciate that Tanzania has made progress. However, in addition to what my colleagues have said in terms of nutrition, in terms of health, let me bring out one other issue, which is around violence against children. Because the 2012 study which was done on this actually shows that almost 75% of children say that they have experienced or experience physical violence, okay? And that can be at different age groups. It's not necessarily that they're experiencing at the very young age. Often it's slightly older when they're either in schools or homes and communities. And I think this is also something that we need to take into account as we're talking about early childhood development, that you know, some of these things are taken as given. It's not a big deal. That's how you discipline children, and it's absolutely fine. And it brings us back to this whole issue of social norms. And, you know, to start talking a little bit about these, to talk about, is this the only way to discipline your children? There are more non-violent but very positive and effective ways of disciplining children. So I wanted to bring this issue up in terms of, you know, we spoke about nutrition, health, we need to talk about the violence issue as well, and the early stimulation. But your question is, are they enjoying their basic rights? I would still say some are. There are huge inequities in the country. If you map out the country, there are certain regions where children really are not doing well.
Discipline.
If you start mentioning child's right issues, you know, they have the right to be fed adequately. They have the right to get the best education. They have the right to get medical care. You know, there are so many, you know, rights that the kids, you know, should enjoy. But we know the statistics telling us some, you know, we are not yet there.
Absolutely. Now, the question of disciplining, I think you talked about the social norms are very, very basic and fundamental, because in some countries you can't whip a little boy or girl when becomes naughty. And they can be taken away from you and put on the social services. But here in Africa, disciplining is normal. But anyway, okay. What other challenges, very quickly, children in Africa and especially in Tanzania face in their development? Very quickly.
I think the challenges are many.
Okay.
And most of them are on nutrition, adequate nutrition, the protection issues, and economic issues. So we can use a comprehensive approach to solve those challenges.
I think basically poverty is a huge underlying challenge, and I think information and some of the social, cultural norms and practices which we would slowly need to shift together.
Okay, Dr.
Yeah, I will also mention the poverty as underlying factors, but there are those immediate that the household should take care, the household food insecurity. The household food insecurity are also issues, and the issues of violence and, you know, child abuse and all that. Those are, I think, they are really challenges to make us move. And the inadequate pre-primary, you know, prioritization, I think those are challenges,
Very quickly, Josephine.
I will talk about disease as well. So issues like HIV, where majority of children are left as orphans, and you end up being siblings taking care of their own siblings, and actually missing the opportunity to be children.
Now, I thought that was the last, but let me just finish with this one quickly again. Finally, what is your message to Tanzanians, the government and leaders, on seriously investing on early childhood development? Quickly.
I think we should go
Your word.
with the key actors, the mothers, the fathers, and the caregivers who are responsible in taking care of their children. So we need to capacitate them on how to do it.
All right, very quickly.
A good early childhood lasts a lifetime. That's what I want to say.
My main message, catch them young.
Catch them
Young.
young. You leave them, itakuwa kama samaki. Okay. Yes.
For me, definitely looking at indicators. We need to have child development indicators, the same as we have other indicators for malaria, for child mortality, for stunting, to be able to measure ourselves how we are progressing.
Thank you very much. How thankful can I be for your contribution to this topic? It has been very interesting, challenging, with a sense of humor too. But of course, fundamentally, the message has been sent out there. So I thank you very much, first for the challenges you referred to, and then for the few words that you want Tanzanians to take, the government, the leadership, what they should be doing together with the rest of Tanzania. I thank you for that. So let me finish, viewers, after the presentation and the argument with that information for my panelists here. Let me conclude by saying the Unicef report on early childhood early moments matter was launched in New York, as I said during the beginning, on the current session of the United Nations General Assembly. It is indeed a very significant report which highlights the importance of political commitment and investing in early childhood development, as we have heard from my panelists here. This is not only a global level, but also at individual country level, like Tanzania. And you heard from Maniza here that Tanzania was involved in the report. It is certainly obvious that lives in early years of childhood have a profound impact on the child's future. UNICEF statements, for example, indicated that when loved, nourished, and cared for in safe and stimulating environments, children develop the skills they need to embrace opportunity and bounce back from diversity. Early childhood presents a strong window of opportunity to difference in child's life. And of course, UNICEF says, according to UNICEF, across the world, early childhood development programs offer the interventions that combine nutrition, protection, stimulation, and support to parents, caregivers, and communities to help vulnerable children get a fair start in life. Parents, please take note of this serious assertion. Parents, both mother and fathers. There was no father here to represent the views. Okay, I was there. But it's important for parents, all parents, as Dr. Kaganda referred to take part in this early childhood development. This is all we have for you today. Until next Sunday at 9 o'clock, and on Thursday at 15 hours for the repeat program. Please watch this. It's a very important program. On behalf of my panel, Hadija Haji, Maniza Zamani, UNICEF, Dr. Joyce Kaganda, Nutrition, Jocelyn Fala, a very interesting name I didn't ask you where it comes from, and my TBC Television Center crew. Thank you, viewers, and goodbye.